Yeah, saw them setting it up yesterday. There were loads of them. It'll be worth it, promise.
Gotcha!
Xenoblade 3 is one of the greatest games of all time. I said it, I'm not going to take it back. I'll be available at these coordinates on the screen now if you'd like to fight this out. Before you bring your pitchforks though, I'd like you to hear me out. Today, I want to sit down for the second time and explain why I love Xenoblade 3, from someone whose literal first Xeno game was Xenoblade 3. This video is a remake of another video I did in 2022, which isn't the best quality, and I've personally been wanting to remake it for a good while now, and with the recent 3-year anniversary of the game, which I'm a couple weeks late to, I figured today would be a good time to sit down and talk about the game once again. I won't be discussing the DLC story, Future Redeemed, here, because I did a separate video on that a year ago, so if you'd like to check that out, please feel free to go ahead and do so, but watch this one first. In particular, I'll be discussing the soundtrack, gameplay, characters, and overall story. And of course, this means spoilers will be very much ahead, so if you're planning on playing or still haven't beaten the game, this is your warning. With that said, no more rambling, let's talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 again.
Fighting in order to live, and living to fight. That's the way of our world. Ionios. Cruel irony that it should mean eternity, because slowly but surely, our world is now dying. Even though we have yet to realize that fact.
The music in this game slaps across the board, let me tell you that to start off. The Moebius song is super well orchestrated, it genuinely feels menacing, especially at certain points in the song where it feels like the Moebius chorus are laughing at you. Even the normal battle theme you hear each time you enter a battle is a banger. The chain attack music too, really good, but I definitely understand the complaint that it can get very annoying very quickly, as it plays every single time you start a chain attack, which you'll be doing a lot in this game, and there's unfortunately no way to turn it off. Back on track though, I genuinely believe there is no point in the game where I felt tired or bored during a fight, because the soundtrack keeps the player feeling alive, and even when the songs aren't this really energetic anthem, they're still quite nice to listen to. Like, slow melodies, and hell, I haven't even discussed the vocal themes. A Step Away and Where We Belong each play once during the two most hard-hitting scenes in the game, and listening back, both are still really quite emotional, and even without the context of the game, both are still very nice songs. In A Step Away's case, it plays during the final scene of Chapter 5, when Noah and the team lost to N, and are now locked up together with the exception of Mio, who is now in the cell next to them. It's really good at conveying the emotion and sadness that the team's going through, especially knowing that Mio is going to be lost and there's nothing you can do to stop it. It feels very hopeless and bleak, but I'll speak more on that during the story segment. The point is, this soundtrack slaps. I also can't get through this without mentioning somewhere that in the creation of the soundtrack, in order to create a unique sound for Noah and Mio, they literally invented their own flutes just for this OST, and you can hear them all throughout the game's music. Xeno 3's soundtrack is easily one of my favorite OSTs of all time, and I highly recommend everyone listens to it, even if you aren't a fan of Xenoblade. With that said, let's begin talking about the gameplay. Xeno 3's gameplay is a mix of everything that had come before, and I mean everything. Xeno 1, 2, and even X all combine here to create a gameplay system that is not only fun, but incredibly customizable. It really doesn't matter which character you choose to play as here, because all that limits them is your very own knowledge of the game's mechanics. Now, technically that is a lie, because Noah does have a move which is exclusive to him, and is arguably the best move in the game to my understanding, but you can get through the entire game without it, and you don't unlock it until Chapter 6 anyways, so if you want to ignore it, you can. But let's actually speak about what mechanics the game has, because there's a lot. To start, the combat system and the way you build up arts depends on which side you're using. If you're a Keves character, Noah, Uni, or Lands, your arts will build up similar to how Xenoblade 1 builds them, essentially being a timer that you have to wait on. You can decrease this timer a lot though, and it's really not that big of a nuisance compared to how it is in Xeno 1. However, if you're controlling an Agnian character, that being Mio, Tyon, and Senna, your arts will build up via auto attacks like how it's featured in Xenoblade 2. This is a fun way to integrate both systems instead of leaning on one or the other. But it does make me pivot towards Agnian characters just because I think XC2's system of using auto attacks to build arts is far better than XC1's system of having it be on a timer. Gems are also returning after not being in Xenoblade 2 at all, and are far more streamlined this time around compared to at least my experience with them in Xenoblade 1. Most importantly though, returning from Xenoblade X, Xenoblade 3 brings back the class system, except instead of it only being on one character, it's on all 6 fully playable characters, so you can see where this is going. At least when it comes to individual characters and not the whole party, I don't think it's as busted as Xenoblade X is, but it's still quite fun to play around with and experiment. There's so much you can do with it, and having it be available for all of the main cast makes it all the more enjoyable. Especially with now being able to switch characters within the battles themselves, Xenoblade 3 encourages you to be less dependent on one character and move around more and mess with the builds you've created for the rest of the cast in order to get the most out of all of its mechanics. Although, if you want to stick to the previous game's trademark of being locked into one character during the battles, you can do that as well. There's also the hero system, which also gives you some extra support by providing you a non-controllable, mostly non-customizable character, which gives a great deal of support in battle. The support they give varies depending on their class. They could be a healer, they could be a damage dealer, a tank, etc. Although the heroes being non-controllable does kinda suck, especially for those who want to play as certain characters, it makes sense as a way to distinguish them from the main cast, so I can't really be upset. The heroes themselves are all pretty fun to mix around, and you can also just really choose who you like, although obviously it depends on how your party is set up. I also really find it pretty neat how all the gameplay mechanics are contextualized throughout the game with actual explanations instead of just saying, you can do this. For example, the save points after every chapter finishes is contextualized by Mio's diary, and when Mio dies, that diary is replaced by the flute she gave to Noah. The irises also help to contextualize stuff like the map and the class changing. It's really nice attention to detail and helps the game feel more immersive as a result. Combat-wise, the final thing I really want to mention about is Ouroboros, although I'm not really sure what I could say that hasn't already been said. In terms of how Ouroboros plays, and it can be quite a joy to switch around and go all out on attacking, and each form provides its own purpose in battle. Story-wise, I think is where Ouroboros shines the most though, primarily because of how it represents unity. These two sides coming together to create these rather powerful beings. It's so interesting, and the designs are pretty cool as well. Now I can finally speak about the world this game is set in, Ionios, because I feel like it catches a lot of flack. Said flack is both undeserved and also deserved at the same time. I was speaking about immersion, and that applies here. Xenoblade 3, more than any game in the series, does the most to make you feel like you are these characters. Almost all of its mechanics are explained through real-world lore and the story itself. The world is no exception to this. Ionios is often criticized for having little to do in it compared to previous games. There's also fewer towns/cities as a whole, but I think this is fine because it helps to serve the story. The only city in this game is, well, the city, because this world is trapped into endless war, and endless now if you will. Moebius has prevented them from being able to evolve, to create civilizations outside of the colonies. The world itself hasn't really been explored outside of battle research, and this is reflected in the state the world is in once you start the game. The lack of towns and cities really helps to make the city itself stand out once you reach it. you realize this is how things should be and why everyone wants to set things back to how they were. But I guess with us talking so much about the story, we should finally dive deeper into the writing of the game by talking about the most important part and what arguably brings all of the game's themes, its gameplay, its music, etc. together, that being the cast. Chapter 1 spends its time introducing you to the Keves trio, Noah, Lens, and Uni. These three, like I said, are the sole focus of the chapter until you meet Vendam and are reintroduced to the Agnian trio, Mio, Tyon, and Senna. So already you have an interesting dynamic for these characters, being that the two trios come from different sides, yet need to learn to embrace one another despite their internal conflicts. And the game is excellent at showing how they progress through this, and eventually come to trust and confide in one another. I'm going to spend this section just going through each of the cast and talking about them. I'll also relegate some time to the side characters, because this game's side cast is arguably on par with the main cast in my opinion. And all because, just like everything else, I didn't do them justice at all in the original video. Alongside Mio, Noah is essentially the main character. Okay, actually no, not even essentially, he is the main character. Noah is very caring, and most of the time restrains from taking a life unless it's absolutely necessary. So, basically, if Moebius is in that way. Noah's restraint from taking a life comes from his time in Keves of being an Off-Seer, a role where you don't fight but instead stay back and help to send the life force of the people you've lost off. Noah is easily one of the best characters of the game, and yeah, you'd sure hope so considering he's the protagonist, but the craziness of Chapter 5 and 6 really do cement this in my eyes. Noah desperately trying to save Mio at any cost is the most heartbroken I've ever felt, but also weirdly empowering at the same time, just watching him cling onto any possible hope he could think of, all of the gang coming together to figure out ways that maybe they could save her. Until finally, the day comes and the chapter ends with N seemingly killing you. But I also want to use this segment to speak about N, because what a character, man. He's incredibly similar to Anakin Skywalker, particularly with his arc, obsessing over his lover so badly that he does anything to prevent her from dying, fighting against the thing he inevitably becomes. Except, where Anakin fails and succeeds, and does revive Ame, but in doing so he disrespects her memory and she drifts away from him. It is a perfect spin on an already iconic story, adding more tragedy to an already tragic tale. Not many people like or care for Zed because he's not much of a character, but I do think that's what kind of makes him appealing. That, and I also think his lack of personality fits well with how stagnant the Endless Now is. It's not supposed to evolve or grow, and neither is Zed. Moebius aren't supposed to evolve or grow. He's the Palpatine to N's Anakin, setting the stage while N is the one who's meant to truly play center stage.
Noah, will you keep moving?
Also, while I'll speak about side characters later, I also want to speak about Chris here, because he's a character who's so fused with Noah that it's hard not to mention him here. Chris is a character I'm kind of mixed on, but I do like what he adds to Noah's story of wanting to understand the reason behind the smile. Why, whenever someone he cares for passes, they leave with a smile. This is an interesting arc for a character to take, purely wanting to understand more about life itself and the reasons behind why people smile in the face of their life being swept away. No one likes or wants to die, and I'll speak far more about that with Mio, but it is something we are forced to deal with, and having the comfort that the future is in good hands, the feeling of content that you did everything you could with your life, it's so pleasing to have as you pass on. Now, like I said, Mio is a defining example of that. Like I said earlier, Mio is the other main character that the game centers around. Just like Noah, she's an Off-Seer and tends not to kill unless needed, although she definitely has far less restraint compared to Noah. Throughout the game and up until Chapter 6, one of the main focuses of the game is Mio, due to her being in her 10th term, and the game never hesitates to bring this up. Mio's story is very upsetting and also very relatable. It's very human. That human feeling of knowing your time is close to over, yet wanting to make the most of your final days. And because Mio only has 10 years, that feeling is amplified here. Really, it helps to make the player feel grateful that we have as long as we do. Even though our time may seem short in the grand scheme of things, Mio's story serves as a reminder that for most of us, we're more than lucky to be able to live till 60, 80, sometimes even 100 years. and then we should cherish that time because we never know when it may come to an end. M, on the other side, deals with a completely different issue. Her time is up, or at least it should be. She wants to be able to go on freely, but N struggles to be able to let go of her, and in his path of destruction, goes against everything she loved about the world. It makes for a unique dynamic between Mio and M, where Mio wants more time, M is wishing for less of it. Where Mio wants to remain in this world a little longer, M wants to be free of it. In a way, M captures that feeling of not being allowed to move on. Someone who really wants to, but can't because of external factors. She captures that feeling of being content in life with what you've done, yet your days still aren't over as you watch everyone around you pass on. M and Mio are identical in their looks and personality, but deal with two completely opposite problems. Where Noah and N deal with the same problems, but walk down two different paths in the search for a solution. Now that we have those out of the way, I want to discuss the rest of the main cast. For starters, let's talk about my boy Lanz. Lanz is the second member of the Keves trio. His story is mainly focused on regret and coming to terms with what happened to Yoren, who died in his early terms. In my opinion, while I wouldn't say he's on par with the character writing of Noah and Mio, Lanz is still a great character. The whole situation with Yoren is built up throughout all the game, and you get to see Lanz feel remorse towards it. Unfortunately for him, everything only gets worse and significantly more complex when you get to the reveal that Yoren became Moebius, the very thing Ouroboros is supposed to be fighting against. Now those feelings of remorse and regret have been mixed in with feelings of anger, confusion, a bit of hatred, etc. The Yoren storyline isn't the only thing that lands though. Senna and Lanz both share a common idea that they aren't good enough. In Chapter 5, Lanz is at a talk while in the Agnus prison, and Lanz admits that he really isn't confident and it's all just an act. Both want their time to shine and they almost get that, but they end up failing. Just like the other two Ouroboros pairs, Lanz and Senna have a really good dynamic. Probably my favorite dynamic. There's nothing really implied romantic about them, at least in my opinion. They're just two besties, two good friends, and it's awesome. I think we need more of that, especially in a game where romance is a pretty hard focus. Speaking of Senna, let's move on to her, because she's my favorite of the cast. Senna is the second member of the Agnus trio, and like I said, it's probably my favorite character in the game, as I like her design, and also because I feel like I can relate to her in a way. Senna's story in this game is mainly her trying to grow up the habit of never feeling good enough. Just like I said earlier in Lanz's part, she feels she lacks confidence and is waiting for her time to shine. She even states that she's envious of Noah, Mio, and Lanz because of that. She's definitely the youngest of the group, at least mentally. She's very childlike in her personality, and this can be seen in the way she talks. For example, she calls Mio Mimi, and whenever you choose her order during the chain attacks, she shouts. However, even though she's my favorite, she's probably the character I have the most issues with. I feel like as a character, she's slightly wasted. The arc of her never really feeling good enough and getting her moment to shine is a great arc for her character to go through, especially considering she's, again, the youngest of the group. But I also wish there was more than just that arc. You'd think they'd give her this extra development in her hero quest, and while her hero quest is good, a common consensus I've seen among fans is that it's not really hers. The quest has almost nothing to do with Senna. It's way more related to Gondor instead, which is just really disappointing because the hero quests for the rest of the team all serve as important for their characters. Meanwhile, Senna barely knew Shania, so it didn't have nearly the same effect. I do understand the argument that Shania is meant to parallel Senna, and I get that, but I don't think the game does a great job at showing it, which is why it kind of flies past people's heads. Also, again, it doesn't change that Senna still doesn't really have much of a personal connection to Shania at all. I think if they had more time shared together, Shania and Gondor would feel way more at home within Senna's story. Not to mention, the quest itself also for some reason felt pretty short compared to the others. I'm not sure why, I don't even know if it actually is shorter. It just felt like it was for some reason. Overall, I'm just kind of sad Senna wasn't as developed as the rest of the main cast. I still love her a lot, I just wish she was utilized a lot more. Uni is the third and final member of the Keves trio, and probably one of the most iconic from the cast because of her humor and attitude. Her story in the game starts in Chapter 3, when Uni finds her body from her previous life. It is later revealed she was killed by Consul D when her colony hit gold rank. This story comes to a close in her side quest, where it's revealed the ranks are just a sham created by Moebius to motivate the soldiers. Uni also has an obsession with fortune clovers and is involved with a lot of fortune clover quests due to it being one of the key points of her character. In my opinion, I love Uni. Her dynamic with Tyon works surprisingly well, and I think her character arc fits her perfectly. By giving her a personal connection to the truth behind the colonies and the ranking system, it helps to flesh out her character and the world around her simultaneously. Also, yeah, she's just a really comedic character in general, she's great. And then finally, we have Tyon, the final member of the Agnian trio. His story revolves around regret from his youth when he failed to save Nimue. This takes a primary focus in Chapter 3, which basically revolves around Tyon and his feelings of loss. It comes to a close in his side quest where he finds the rebirth of Nimue in another colony where everyone is freed from the flame clog. I can't lie, at the start of the story I found Tyon to be pretty annoying, but his character absolutely gets better throughout the game, and while he's probably still my least favourite, I still love him quite a bit. He's a smart person, but he's definitely not as confident, and I think that clashes well with the rest of the cast. Before we finish up with the character segment, I do want to go through some of the non-playable characters. First off, Riku and Manana. They're part of the main cast, but they aren't actually playable, instead being relegated to the hero system. Riku basically acts as the mechanic, but is also very mysterious as a character, but Future Redeemed confirms that he's at least 1,000 years old, and is also the son of Riki from Xenoblade 1. Now, how is he 1,000 years old? No one knows. I'd assume it's probably due to origin shenanigans. Well, not one can really just live that long, but it's likely origin. Then there's Manana, who isn't as nearly as important as Riku. We don't really know anything about her, she's just kinda there to provide food. She's cute, I guess, but she continues the trend of Xenoblade 2 Noppon being significantly worse than Xenoblade 1 Noppon. Moving on from the Noppon, we have Monica, who you meet in Chapter 5, and I have to apologize because I did her really dirty in the original video, and I don't know how I got away with that unscathed. Monica is by far one of the best characters in the game, serving as another mentor figure for the Ouroboros group, and yeah, she's pretty awesome. Most importantly, I really love her no bullshit dynamic with Gondor, and while she doesn't have much in terms of an arc, she's a pretty great replacement for Van Damme, who, you know. Her daughter Gondor is next to Uni in terms of being the funniest character in the game. I love her. I wasn't too sure on her character at first because the game kind of misleads you on the relationship of her and Shania, but eventually I came to really love Gondor. Now, on the topic of Shania, whenever I think of her, I usually think of Himiko Toga from My Hero Academia, because despite how different they may seem, they do have a couple similarities, mainly being people who were misunderstood by the world around them and in turn caused them to become mentally very unwell. Shania is not a character I particularly care for, but she is one I really respect. Another character I respect but also cared for is Miyabi. She feels like a more fleshed out Chris to me. Chris is fine, but I don't think he really brings as much to the table as hard as Miyabi does. Miyabi is why Mio's thoughts on Off-Seeing change dramatically from how she starts off. Miyabi is also interesting because she's much more similar to Noah than she is to Mio. Both of them bring up that sounding off the voices of the departed, no matter which side they may come from, is an opposite purpose. And they also both share the ideology that, in fact, neither side are living to fight, but instead fighting to live. The game uses this to hammer home the point that even though both sides are locked into an internal conflict that's seemingly unescapable, the people involved in this conflict are still very human. And you know what, let's talk about Yoron as well, who is a major focus point of basically the entire game up until Chapter 7. His storyline is quite well written and his sacrifice feels well earned, especially because it's been built up for so long that it serves as a good ending for his character. Yoron as a character is really tragic, knowing how no matter what life he's in, he will always be seen as a failure. But in his final moments, he was finally given a choice to die how he wanted to die, by protecting the people he cares about and redeeming himself for his past actions.
You should have just looked out for number one. But you were so scary, I didn't really feel like I had that option. I suppose. I'm sorry, Euron. Maybe if we meet again. Yeah. And next time, we will win.
Finally, I want to end off this segment by speaking about two characters who I initially didn't care much for, but upon playing through their stories, came to adore and appreciate on a level I could never imagine. Melia and Nia. Yeah, so in the original video, I barely addressed these two because, like I said at the very start of this video, Xenoblade 3 was the first game I played in the series. Outside of Pyra/Mythra and Shulk, because they were in Smash, I wasn't too familiar with everyone else. But in the 3 years since that video, I've obviously played all of the Xenoblade titles. Not the titles in general, just Xenoblade, but I am trying to play Xenogears and Xenosaga. I swear I'll get to them. Anyways, Nia especially has quite a bit more screen time in 3 compared to Melia, and you can tell they definitely had a ton of fun with writing it. I love the bit she has where she's really trying to be proper in how she talks, yet clearly can't actually pull it off, and Melia, yeah, she doesn't get as screen time, but come on, it's Melia. It's great to see her again in any context. And with them, you also get to see the Monado Rex again, and you get to see the photo that broke the Xenoblade fandom permanently. Xenoblade 3 has so many incredible characters, and I wish I could talk about all of them. I mean, I didn't even mention the legendary Ethel and Kamaravi, who, despite being enemies, still had tons of respect for each other and were basically friends, adding more to the point that these really are humans at the end of the day, no matter the fact that they're being controlled by Moebius. I also didn't get to speak about my boy Valdi, who I love with all my heart, because if I did speak about everyone, we'd be here all day, and I'm already very behind on this video, but I guess now is our chance to speak more on the story itself. Xenoblade 3's story is damn near perfect. I say near because, yeah, there's flaws. Chapter 6 and 7 definitely need more time compared to the rest of the game, especially Chapter 7 with how the fights with the remaining members of Moebius were. Pretty obviously rushed, but I could never in a million worlds call the game that destroyed me emotionally as hard as it did with Chapter 5 and the ending bad. I just can't. I wouldn't be making this video twice if the game was bad. I would not have played 1, 2, or X if this game was bad. A couple times now, I've mentioned that 3 was my first Xenoblade game, and a common point I've seen against 3's story in the almost 3 years since I beat the game is, you won't understand Xeno 3's story if you haven't played Xeno 1 and 2, and I'm here to tell you that is really not the case. Well, yes, certain cameos, references, callbacks to the previous games will be lost on you if you haven't played the previous entries. They do not take from the experience in the slightest. I was still able to appreciate the story as it was on my own, without needing full knowledge from the prior games. Xeno 3 definitely has enough to stand on its own 2 legs, without you having to play the 2, technically 4 if you include Future Connected and Torna, other games. With that said, there's 2 major scenes I want to talk about in this segment: the ending of Chapter 5, and the end of the game. Mainly because these are the points in the game where the story really shines. Chapter 5's ending is commonly referred to as the peak of the game, and for very good reason. There's so much to talk about. Everything in this scene is just perfect and beautiful. Mio's final conversation with Noah, and telling them about what his plan is for them, the choice of music, everything is just so well done. Let's start off with the first part. Noah trying to break the cell door and trying to attack Anne when he tells them the truth shows a lot for his character. Throughout the game, he hasn't been the one to break down or get too emotional. However, throughout this entire scene, he's just not with it at all. He's completely defeated, and it's portrayed through how he refuses to eat, and during the montage of the cast trying to break down the door, he's the only one who is there in every variation. He is determined at every cost to save Mio, even if it means throwing his life away. And in this scene also is just so damn cool. Like, he's a terrible human being, but his aura was off the charts here. This is a scene where it's truly shown how much of a true threat Anne is, not only to the team, but to the world as a whole, and they do it really well. The fact he was willing to kill off Mio just to spite the cast is cold. You can't help but hate Anne for this. It's so sick and twisted, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I also need to bring up, like, the flute part. I realized I mentioned this in the script. The flute part, when I was rewatching the scene, the flute part where he tells Noah to pick up the flute, what was his damage? Why did he do that? What was his damage? Why? That genuinely, like, only a psychopath does that. Bro goes, "This is your girl. Go Off-Seer her right now." You sick fuck, man. Oh my god. But yeah, they want to truly show you and make you feel just how hopeless this situation really is. Mio's last conversation broke me, and it points out how locked in the writing is in this game with the attention to detail. Noah says how she finally says his name, and if you go back and check the entire game before Chapter 5's ending, she doesn't say his name once until this very moment. The writers were on something with that. I don't know what it was, but I want it. And the part where she says how she wants to continue living instead of dying is not only such a nice part, but does a lot for her character and really shows how much this fight against Moebius has changed her perspective on life as a whole. But because we don't know this is M talking, we just have to watch as her life comes to an end without having the power to change that. It puts a staple on how horrible this only 10 years rule really is, and only motivates the player to want to change the world even more. You could say this scene is ruined by the fact that Mio ends up alive, but I disagree, because the way this moment is used is genius. Instead of just keeping both alive, M takes the blow which serves to amplify N's story by having him completely break down and realize that not only did he fail in making Noah go through what he went through, but the reason he became Moebius, the last 1,000 years of his life, all of it, has been for nothing, because he lost her anyways. In reality, she'd been lost the moment he chose to revive her instead of letting her rest in peace, but to him, this is it. This is where he is forced to confront and face the weight of his actions. It is a masterclass in confrontation, in morality, in character writing, and oh my god, I can't forget to mention Harry McIntyre's spectacular performance here. Chapter 5, again, is constantly praised as the peak of the game, and it's totally understandable why, because it really is just that good.
Why, Mio? Why would you do this to me? You said you'd be by my side. Mio! All I did for you!
You must have known. The other me. She couldn't follow you anymore. She couldn't go on.
Okay, we finally reached it. If this story is near perfect, this ending is perfect. Let's start off by talking about the cast and their final little moments together. I love how well this scene shows off the bonds between each Ouroboros pair and how far they've grown from the beginning of the game. Noah and Mio thanking each other for sticking around and helping each other achieve their dreams. Lance and Senna is my favorite pairing, and them talking about how they won't be working out together anymore and how they coordinate a fist bump without looking at each other is so adorable, but also makes me very much depressed. Uni teasing and calling Tyon her fourth best bud in reference to her favorite hobby being collecting fortune clovers is not only a nice callback, but also a nice hint towards her feelings about Tyon. And Tyon getting flustered is interesting as it's never an emotion he usually shows. The entire montage is so bittersweet, even though we know it's for the best, you can't help tear up saying goodbye to them. I also like Nia and Melia's little duologue about how they will eventually meet again. It's a short but nice moment that provides a little bit of hope for the Xenoblade 3 cast. Also, again, the callbacks to previous games with Melia looking at the Nod at Rex, and Nia looking at a photo of older versions of the XC2 cast with Poppy showing up. Once again, I'm going to say it, this ending is perfect. All of this combined with the fact that the ending to this scene is sad but also deeply beautiful, where they're just running towards each other as the world split apart and there's nothing they can do to catch up. And the song choice here is heartbreaking. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is the songs in this game aren't just really good, but they also have actual context for the game itself. In this song, for example, Where We Belong, the song states, "This goodbye is not the end, I know until we meet again," which fits how Nia believes that even though everything that happened in Xenoblade 3 will be forgotten and the timeline will be reset to before Origin, everyone will get to walk hand in hand again. This ending does really well at tricking the player into believing the ending is a sad one, but if you go back, you'll see this ending is good. Bittersweet, but good. Xenoblade 3 is a game about many things. About moving on, about not letting yourself be trapped in the present, about making do with the time you have left in the world. But most importantly, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is a message about not surrendering hope. About not surrendering the hope to move on, even when faced with insurmountable tragedy. The hope that even though it may seem like they'll be separated forever, they will walk together again.
Zed and the other Moebius. They wanted to protect the world too.
That's why they created one they could control. I see where they were coming from.
That's something that we feel almost every day.
Having to change. To continue to change. That's sparking scary.
But we can say this. Even if we are reborn later, right then, what we think and feel that moment is real. To sacrifice that is never the right way.
If you can't be true to yourself, then you're doing something wrong. Are you content with your decision?
Very soon, the stilled flow of time will restart. You can change your mind if you act now.
You did not just tell us to become Moebius.
Yeah, can you even imagine? Noah? Why are you wavering, Noah?
Some want to go on, and some want to stay. In this world, there are so many mingled desires. But do we? Does anyone have the right to choose?
Oh, don't you start minding us now. Just having the chance to be born in that world you make, that'll be plenty. So, you know, you just gotta do it your way.
Gondor.
Though if I can, I might want a better name, eh?
Noah, all of us here want the same thing. It's how the future should be.
Yeah. You're right.
The future is right there. Believe in the actions you've taken, in your friends. And above all, you should believe in yourselves.
Well then, the answer's simple.